Chapter 3559. Seeing the person who came, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's faces showed a trace of surprise. Without waiting for them to ask, the cultivator spoke first. Lord Long has sent me to inform you that the palace master wishes to see you. As the man's voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but look at each other. Their expressions were a bit complicated. They may have heard of the palace master of Penglai Palace, but they do not have any understanding of his temperament. The last time they had caused such a huge commotion in the outer palace of Penglai Palace, Lord Long had been worried about how he would explain it to the palace master. However, the palace master had not been in Penglai Palace at the time, so they have never been punished. Now that the palace master has returned and wants to see them, things have become a little more complicated. Seeing the change in the expressions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, the cultivator spoke up. Lord Long and Teacher Yi have said that they will accompany you. I believe that with them around there shouldn't be any major problems. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three nodded. They then followed the man and returned to Lord Long's residence. At this point, it was useless for them to have any suspicions in their hearts. They would only be able to find out the palace master's true intentions after meeting him. Counter soldiers with arms and water with an earth weir. This had always been their attitude when faced with difficulties. They believed that the heavens would never bar one's way and that there would always be a way. When Long Yanwei saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had returned, he said, "The palace master has only just returned today and he has already sent someone to see you. He must have heard about what had happened." As soon as these words were spoken, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's hearts sank. It seems that their judgment was not wrong. The palace master had indeed come to see them because of what they had done. You don't have to worry too much. Although you had caused a huge commotion overall, this matter was not your fault. Long Yanwei comforted Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. Later on, if the palace master asks you anything, just answer him truthfully. The palace master is not someone who cannot distinguish right from wrong. We understand. A complicated light flashed through D. Baichen's bottomless black eyes, but his face was very calm, revealing a bit of calmness and composure. For Penglai Palace to have such a status on Penglai Island, its palace master naturally could not be someone who could not distinguish right from wrong. On the contrary, he should be very wise. In the face of such an expert, he was not too worried. Long Yanwei and Yi Zihua nodded inwardly when they saw the stable emotions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. Then they led Bailey Hongzhuang and the others towards the palace master's sleeping quarters. The palace of the palace lord was located at the back of the Penglai Palace. It was very wide and hidden. The closer they got to the palace master's chambers, the quieter Bailey Hongzhuang and the others found that there were fewer and fewer people around. However, they could still feel that there were some gazes on them. Come to think of it, these should be the guards here. Although there seemed to be no one here, if someone dared to force their way in, they would probably be attacked immediately. After standing in front of the sleeping quarters and announcing their arrival, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three followed Long Yanwei and Yi Zihua into the sleeping quarters. As soon as they entered the sleeping quarters, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three saw a white figure. Chapter 3560. Bai Cangming had a handsome face and an extraordinary temperament. His black eyes were unfathomable as he sized up Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four. It was as if he could see through their hearts, leaving them with nowhere to hide. "Greetings, Hall Master." Everyone bowed. Bai Cangming nodded and indicated that there was no need for formalities. His gaze then landed on Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four. As Bai Cangming's gaze swept over them, Bailey Hongzhuang's group felt as if they had been completely seen through. They lowered their heads and sighed inwardly. The Penglai Palace's hall master was indeed extraordinary. With their current strength, it was impossible for an ordinary person to give them the feeling of being seen through, unless it was a cultivator who was much stronger than them. So far, Bai Cangming could be said to be the first person they had encountered. Bai Cangming briefly sized them up before withdrawing his gaze. He then looked at Long Yanwei and said unhurriedly, "These four are the little fellows that you made an exception for?" Long Yanwei nodded. "That's right, it's them." Although he had never seen the hall master before, he knew very well that the hall master was well informed. He believed that the hall master had already found out everything that had happened in this short period of time. Their appearances are very outstanding, but I don't know if they're worth making an exception for. Bai Cangming spoke indifferently. No emotion could be heard from his indifferent voice. In the next second, Bai Cangming's gaze once again turned to Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four. "The commotion you caused a few days ago wasn't small. It was just a simple sentence, but it gave Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four a heavy pressure. His penetrating gaze shot straight at them as if he wanted to see through all their thoughts. Long Yanwei was about to defend Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 when he was stopped by Tsangming. You don't have to be in a hurry to speak. I'm asking about them. Long Yanwei could only shut his mouth when he saw this. He could not help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4. It seemed that the hall master intended to personally test them. Standing to one side, Yi Zihua was also silent. The palace master always had his own thoughts. At such a time, even if they wanted to explain, it would be useless. Everything would depend on the performance of the 4 of them. Answer yourselves. Since the hall master has summoned us here, he must have already understood what happened and made some considerations. No matter what we say now, it will not change the hall master's mind. Moreover, I believe that with the hall master's wisdom, he will definitely be able to view this matter accurately. Di Beichen raised his head slowly and looked straight at Bai Tsangming. His handsome and calm face didn't reveal the slightest trace of fear, and it revealed a calm expression instead. Bai Tsangming and Di Beichen's gazes met, and Bai Tsangming noticed that Di Beichen didn't shrink back in the slightest, nor did Di Beichen reveal the slightest fear, and a wisp of a glow of interest couldn't help but flash within Bai Tsangming's eyes. This kind of attitude that was neither servile nor overbearing made him admire it very much. In this Penglai palace, there were not many cultivators who could be so calm when they saw him. He somewhat understood why Long Yanwei would treat them differently. You're quite bold to speak to me like this. Bai Tsangming spoke in a deep voice. At this moment, there wasn't the slightest trace of light in his pitch-black and deep eyes, and the atmosphere in the entire sleeping quarters seemed to have stopped in an instant. Chapter 3561. The entire hall suddenly fell silent and the atmosphere became extremely tense. Long Yanwei and Yi Zihua looked worriedly at Di Beichen. He had to answer properly at a time like this. If he angered the palace master, it would not be easy to deal with the consequences. Compared to the worries of Long Yanwei and the rest, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 trusted Di Beichen very much. No matter how Di Beichen answered, they would support him wholeheartedly. I believe that the palace master has already understood this from what we have done previously. Di Beichen spoke slowly as a faint smile appeared on his handsome face. I believe that any cultivator with achievements would not be timid. What does the palace master think about this? Di Beichen's expression was calm. He knew very well that no matter what explanation they gave, it would be of no use to the palace master. This was because the palace master already had his own judgment in his heart. Instead of giving an explanation at a time like this, it would be better to just admit it frankly. This would make the palace master admire them even more. At the very least, daring to own up to one's actions had always been a characteristic of powerhouses. If they were timid and afraid of trouble, the palace master would probably look down on them the most. Bai Tsangming sized up Di Beichen. When he first saw Di Beichen's outstanding appearance, he did not think much of it. However, after hearing Di Beichen's answer, he admired him even more. Do you all have the same thoughts as him? Bai Tsangming looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 who had remained silent and asked slowly. That's right. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. We were indeed responsible for the previous incident and we do not wish to shirk our responsibilities. Xiren and Shangguan Yingying also maintained the same attitude. The 4 of them were originally one, so their thoughts and attitudes were naturally the same. Of course they would not be disloyal. Do you know how much of an impact the commotion you caused previously had on the entire outer hall? Do you know how much damage it caused? Bai Tsangyan's voice deepened as an enormous pressure pressed down on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Under this pressure, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others felt as if a huge mountain was pressing down on them, making it hard for them to breathe. Their foreheads instantly broke out in cold sweat, and even their upright bodies were slightly hunched over. Seeing this scene, Long Yanwei involuntarily cried out, "Hall Master!" Bai Tsangming raised his right hand slightly and directly stopped Long Yanwei from speaking, and he indicated for Long Yanwei to keep quiet. Seeing this, Long Yanwei frowned and shut his mouth in the end. You guys are so daring, could it be that you're relying on Long Yanwei's admiration for you? Bai Tsangming raised his eyebrows. The Penglai Palace is not a place where you can act as you please. Aren't you afraid that I will punish you? Temple Master, we didn't act recklessly just because Lord Long admires us. Di Beichen furrowed his beautiful brows. Under this enormous pressure, it became difficult for him to speak. We were indeed in the wrong for causing such a huge impact previously. However, this matter has nothing to do with Lord Long. We have let Lord Long down. If Temple Master really wants to punish us, we accept it. However, I hope that Temple Master will not implicate Lord Long in this matter. All of these mistakes were caused by the four of us, and it has nothing to do with Lord Long. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but speak out. Chapter 3562. Any person in a high position would be able to control their emotions very well. Apart from the person himself, it was very difficult for others to see through his emotions. However, regardless of whether Bai Tsangming really wanted to punish them, at the very least they could not implicate Long Yanwei. Long Yanwei had been helping them since they entered the Penglai Palace. If Long Yanwei was implicated because of this, they would truly feel apologetic. After Long Yanwei heard what Bailey Hongzhuang and the others said, his gaze became gentler. At least at a time like this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were still thinking of not implicating him. If it were some selfish cultivator, they would have used him as a shield at this moment. Yi Zihua exchanged glances with Long Yanwei, and a faint smile surfaced in his eyes. Clearly he had the same thoughts as Long Yanwei. Although Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had rejected Long Yanwei's request, they could still see the sincerity of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Being able to express such an attitude at a time like this at least proved that they were grateful to Long Yanwei from the bottom of their hearts. Bai Tsangming's gaze remained on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, and his calm face became even more unfathomable. At this moment, Di Beichen suddenly spoke up, "I believe that the palace master will not punish us." Bai Tsangming raised his brows when he heard that. "What do you mean? If the palace master really wanted to punish us, he would have done so long ago. He would not have spent so much time talking to us." Bai Tsangming suddenly chuckled. "You're quite smart." Everyone present could not help but heave a sigh of relief when they heard Bai Tsangming's words. It seemed like Bai Tsangming's attitude of wanting to punish them was just an act. In reality, he did not intend to punish Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. "How are you so sure that I won't punish you?" Bai Tsangming looked at Di Beichen with great interest and asked. "As the palace master of the Penglai Palace, you must be a person who rewards and punishes clearly." Di Beichen slowly said, "Since that is the case, you are very clear about what happened before. Presumably, you also know that we were forced to do such a thing in a helpless situation. Therefore, I believe that you will not punish us. Otherwise it will damage your reputation. According to what you've said, I really have no reason to punish all of you." Bai Tsangming raised his brows. "Otherwise wouldn't everyone say that I'm unfair?" "I didn't say that." Looking at Di Beichen's calm appearance, the smile on Bai Tsangxing's lips widened a little. "I now understand why Long Yanwei sees you in a different light. I hope you won't disappoint him. After all, the treatment he gave you is unprecedented in the Penglai Palace. If you can't get a good result, the one who will lose face is him." Long Yanwei revealed a smile when he saw Bai Tsangming's attitude, and then he reminded Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. "Why aren't all of you thanking the palace master? You caused such a huge commotion earlier and caused quite a bit of trouble for the Penglai Palace." Bailey Hongzhuang and the others hurriedly bowed when they heard that. "Thank you, palace master." Bai Tsangming waved his hand. "If you want to thank someone, then thank Long Yanwei. I didn't do anything. He had already dealt with this matter completely before I returned." Chapter 3563. The atmosphere in the hall eased up and was no longer as heavy as before. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were no longer as anxious as before, and the conversation became much more relaxed. "I heard that you guys caused quite a commotion in the outer hall today." Bai Tsangming looked thoughtfully at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. "Looks like with you guys here, the outer hall will be lively for a while." Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were stunned when they heard that, and their expressions were a little awkward. If they knew that the palace master would be back today, they would definitely not have chosen to find trouble with Qing Juanhe and the rest today. At the very least, they would have behaved themselves for a while. However, they did not expect that things would be so coincidental. They had just managed to cover up the previous incident with great difficulty, and today they caused another commotion in the outer hall. Bai Tsangming did not seem to notice the awkward expressions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three as he continued. "Long Yanwei has been in the Penglai Palace for so long, but this is the first time that someone has humiliated him like this. It's a pity that I didn't get to see it with my own eyes today." As he spoke, Bai Tsangming's gaze fell on Long Yanwei with a hint of mockery. "Palace master." Long Yanwei's face revealed a trace of helplessness. He knew that Bai Tsangming was laughing at him for reaping what he sowed. If he had not recruited Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, he would not have been humiliated like this today. Bai Tsangming's smile widened. "This is the first time that I've seen such a helpless look on your face. Who asked me to recruit these little fellows?" I have to take responsibility. Long Yanwei sighed. Previously, he did not expect these little fellows to be so good at stirring up trouble. Moreover, they were not the type to endure silently. When they did something, it was natural for them to cause such a huge commotion. It's rare to see you being humiliated like this. It's very interesting. Bai Tsangming smiled faintly and did not continue to mock Long Yanwei. Today's incident was indeed because we did not take Lord Long's feelings into consideration. We are truly ashamed. A hint of guilt appeared on Di Beichen's handsome face. We will definitely not do such a thing again in the future. Bai Tsangming nodded and said, all of you have to be more careful in the future. All of you can be considered to be lucky to have been tricked into entering the training grounds of the inner hall this time. If you were slightly careless and lost your lives there, then your losses would be great. Upon hearing Bai Tsangming's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three cupped their hands together. Thank you for your reminder, Hall Master. We'll be extra careful in the future. This matter was a loss of face for them. They had actually been tricked into going to the training grounds of the Inner Palace disciples. Speaking of which, they were quite gullible. Palace Master, although they accidentally stumbled upon the training grounds of the Inner Palace disciples this time, they still managed to gain some benefits. It's not bad at all. At this moment, Yi Zihua, who had been silent all this while, finally spoke. Oh. Bai Tsangming raised his eyebrows and looked straight at Yi Zihua. Clearly, he was waiting for the latter to explain further. Even though the four of them are only disciples that have just entered the outer palace, the fact that Long Yanwei thinks so highly of them proves that their abilities are not simple. This time, they didn't rely on luck to come out safely from the training grounds of the Inner Palace disciples. On the contrary, they relied completely on their strength. Chapter 3564. Is that true? Bai Tsangming was slightly surprised. He had only heard about what Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four had done in the outer palace, but he did not know how much they had done in the training grounds of the Inner Palace disciples. Yi Zihua nodded and smiled. I only found out about this from my disciple. Don't be fooled by their young age, they have saved many injured people in the Inner Palace this time. If they hadn't accidentally appeared there, I'm afraid our losses would have been even greater. Subsequently, Yi Zihua told Bai Tsangming everything he had learned from Ren Zi and the others. After Bai Tsangming found out about everything, his gaze towards Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four became even brighter. Looks like Long Yanwei's insight is not bad. Bai Tsangming smiled faintly. You're only at the 5th level of the Purple Realm, but you're able to achieve such results in the Skeleton Army. It's truly impressive. Thank you for your praise, Palace Master. Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four clasped their hands together with faint smiles on their lips. However, they did not lose themselves in pride because of Bai Tsangming's praise. Looks like I don't have to worry about you not having the ability to enter the Inner Palace. Just based on your performance in the training grounds of the Inner Palace disciples, it's probably only a matter of time before you enter the Inner Palace. Bai Tsangming's insight was extremely shrewd. Just from Yi Zihua's description, he had already understood that Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four were definitely not weak when it came to fighting above their level. Otherwise, with their current cultivation, it would have been impossible for them to survive in the Skeleton Army, let alone help the other cultivators escape. If other people heard this, they might not believe it. However, Bai Tsangming was an experienced and knowledgeable person. He naturally knew about some extremely outstanding cultivators who possessed the ability to fight above their level. Moreover, their abilities were extremely powerful, so they could not be looked at through the eyes of an ordinary person. Clearly, Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four were such outstanding cultivators. Previously, he didn't quite understand why Long Yanwei would give them 3 contracted beasts after recruiting the 4 of them. Such a shocking move was something that Long Yanwei had never done before. Even as the palace master, it was not easy for him to ask Long Yanwei for a demon pet. And this time Long Yanwei was willing to hand over 3 top-notch demon pets. This proved the importance of these 4 people in his heart. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were indeed not simple. Not only that, they also made some discoveries when they entered the training grounds this time. However, we still need to confirm this matter before we can give a definite answer, Yi Zihua continued. He had originally planned to report to the temple master after confirming the outcome of this matter, but since he had coincidentally met the temple master today, he might as well tell the temple master about this matter first. With the help of the hall master, it would be much easier for him to find cultivators who had mastered the art of music. What did you find? Bai Tsangming became even more curious. It could be seen that the discovery was extremely important for Yi Zihua to say something like that. The training grounds of the inner palace disciples had always been an extremely important place to them. At the same time, it was also a huge problem that all the major forces wanted to solve. However, this problem had existed for a long time, and it was not easy to solve it. Chapter 3565. Bailey Hongzhuang discovered a way to deal with the lich's chanting. Yi Zihua answered truthfully. As Yi Zihua's voice fell, Bai Cangming could not help but be stunned for a moment. He then looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in disbelief, wondering if he had heard wrong. You said she discovered a way to deal with the lich's chanting? Bai Cangming asked again. The lich had always been a huge worry for them because it was too difficult to deal with. Moreover, the appearance of a single lich would have a huge impact on the entire battle and could often change the outcome of the battle. Unless the cultivator was powerful enough to suppress the influence of the lich's chanting, it would be too difficult to do so. However, he had just heard that an outer palace disciple had discovered a way to deal with the lich. It was simply a fantasy story. However, he couldn't treat it as a joke when it came from Yi Zihua because it was impossible for Yi Zihua to make such a joke. Yi Zihua nodded and said with certainty, "That's right. This matter has been verified by other cultivators." Bai Cangming's eyes lit up when he heard Yi Zihua's confirmation. What method? Let Bailey Hongzhuang answer that herself. Yi Zihua said. Bai Cangming looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and asked, How did you deal with the lich? Musical arts. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly, Musical arts and the lich's chanting are both sonic attacks. Thus, the two can confront each other and even cancel each other out. Bai Cangming fell silent for a moment when he heard Bailey Hongzhuang's answer. He seemed to be thinking about the meaning of Bailey Hongzhuang's words. After thinking about it carefully, he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's point was theoretically feasible even though he didn't understand the musical arts. You've grasped the musical arts and achieved a certain effect when dealing with the lich? At that moment, Bai Cangming immediately understood why Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 was able to achieve an effect that other inner hall cultivators could not when facing the skeleton army. It was probably because of the zither technique. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. That's right. I discovered it by accident. However, this zither technique is not only effective against the chanting of the liches, but also against the skeleton army. You mean to say that the music of the zither is just like the chanting of the lich, and it can change the fighting power of the skeleton army? That's right. However, it requires a high level of musical skills. Moreover, different musical skills have different effects, Bailey Hongzhuang answered honestly. Bai Cangming's eyes lit up when he heard this. He could tell that Bailey Hongzhuang was telling the truth and wasn't exaggerating at all. This is really good news for us. We haven't found a way to deal with the liches all these years. If this is really effective, then you've done us a great service. Bai Cangming said with a smile. I hope my judgment isn't wrong. Chapter 3566. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was able to maintain such a calm and indifferent appearance despite having such a huge discovery, and seeing that there was not the slightest hint of pretense in her dark eyes, Bai Cangming understood that this was Bailey Hongzhuang's true nature. He could not help but praise in his heart. Just from this interaction he greatly admired Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. Neither servile nor overbearing, neither arrogant nor rash. This was a very good quality for cultivators. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 did not stay in the bedroom for long. Not long after they took the lead to leave. However, Long Yanwei and Yi Zihua remained in the bedroom. It seemed that they still had many things to report to the palace master. After the 4 left the palace master's bedroom, they could not help but heave a sigh of relief. Although the palace master's attitude was very easygoing, he was still a high and mighty figure which still gave them a kind of pressure. The palace master's attitude was really unpredictable. It almost gave me a big fright. Shangguan Yingying sighed. Fortunately, the final result was good. Otherwise, I wouldn't know what to do. Don't worry. Even if the palace master is really angry with us with Lord Long there, our end won't be too bad. Xiren's face rippled with a faint smile. Although he did not say much in the bedroom earlier, he was very calm in his heart. This was because he and Di Beichen were the same. They had a certain understanding of the mentality of those in power. Furthermore, Lord Long had given them 3 precious demon pets. Even the palace master would not let Lord Long suffer such a huge loss. Fortunately, the palace master is a person who rewards and punishes clearly. We can also heave a sigh of relief. Di Beichen smiled faintly. No matter what, showing our faces in front of the palace master as an outer palace disciple can be considered an honor. Hearing Di Beichen's joke, Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. This time we have to thank senior brother Ren and the others. I believe that they should be waiting for us to return. Shengguan Yingying nodded. That's right. Then let's hurry back. I believe that they are very worried about us. After Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 left, only Bai Cangming, Long Yanwei and Yi Zihua remained in the bedchamber. Long Yanwei, looks like your eyesight is really not bad this time. Even though the cultivation of these 4 little fellows isn't high yet, no matter if it's their temperament or bearing, they're both extremely outstanding. I presume their future accomplishments won't be bad. At this moment, Bai Cangming finally spoke his thoughts seriously. He had previously scared Bailey Hongzhuang and the others because he wanted to know how they would react under such pressure. However, he was extremely satisfied with the results of his probing. The smile on Long Yanwei's face widened a little when he received Bai Cangming's affirmation. I admire them very much as well. However, I'm not sure how far they'll go in the future. You're quite generous this time to actually be able to take out all 3 demon pets. Bai Cangming clicked his tongue. Normally it's extremely difficult for me to take a demon pet from you. Aren't you embarrassed? Recalling the various situations when he had asked Long Yanwei for demon pet eggs all these years, and then associating it with Long Yanwei's generosity in taking out 3 demon pet eggs at once, Bai Cangming felt extremely unbalanced in his heart. Chapter 3567. Hearing Bai Cangming's words, Long Yanwei felt a little ashamed. It was my fault for not thinking things through, which led to such an outcome. I will definitely pay more attention in the future. Rather than saying that it was a mistake made by Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, it was more accurate to say that he was the initiator of the incident. If it wasn't for his failure to control the mouths of his subordinates, then the news would not have leaked out, and Bailey Hongzhuang and the others would not have been envied by so many cultivators, and all the things that happened afterwards would not have happened. In comparison, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not control the development of the incident at all. When the Outer Palace disciples forced them into such a situation, they had no other choice but to resist with all their might. It was because of this that he felt that he owed Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. Although the 4 of them had cheated him of a large sum of money, he had also made them suffer a lot. The 4 of them had just joined Penglai Palace, but they had already made so many enemies. Needless to say, he knew that it would not be easy for the 4 of them to live well in the Outer Palace. It could be seen from the incident where they had been tricked into the training ground of the Inner Palace disciples due to a slight carelessness. If it weren't for their good luck and sufficient strength, they definitely wouldn't have been able to return alive this time. Although Long Yanwei had never said this out loud, he felt a little apologetic towards the 4 of them. When he had recruited the 4 of them, it was because he had high hopes for them and hoped that they would have a better development in Penglai Palace. He did not want to create more problems for them. It was because of this that he did not take it to heart even though Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 had disrespected him. Bai Cangming nodded. You do have to be careful. If something like this were to happen again, I'm afraid that the Outer Palace disciples would feel even more unbalanced. I understand. Long Yanwei replied. In fact, what happened this time was indeed beyond his expectations. Originally, he just wanted to recruit Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 back, and study Bailey Hongzhuang's contract beast while he was at it. He didn't expect that these 4 people would completely ignore the name of Penglai Palace and refuse without thinking, which made him feel awkward. Then, in order to successfully recruit the 4 of them back, he offered the condition of giving them demon pets. Who would have thought that 1 contract beast would turn into 3 contract beasts? He jumped into this pit himself and didn't have the face to climb out, so he could only suffer such a big loss. However, he believed that in this world, except for Bailey Hongzhuang, this abnormal person who could have 3 contract beasts, it was absolutely impossible for other cultivators to have such a situation, so this incident was absolutely impossible to repeat. Speaking of which, I'm a little curious. How did you think of recruiting them? Bai Cangming and Long Yanwei could be said to be very good friends in private. When they were together, he had never used his identity to suppress Long Yanwei. At this moment they were talking like good friends. It's a long story. Let me tell you about it. Chapter 3568. Bai Cangming's interest was piqued when he heard Yi Zihua's words. He had known Long Yanwei for a long time, so he understood Long Yanwei's character very well. Such extravagance was truly not in line with Long Yanwei's usual character, so he believed that there must be some twists and turns in this matter. Now that he noticed the teasing and playful expression on Yi Zihua's face, he understood that this matter was probably not entirely due to Long Yanwei's admiration. There were probably other reasons as well. Long Yanwei sighed and allowed Yi Zihua to speak about this matter, as he himself didn't want to repeat this matter once more. However, after Yi Zihua described the entire process, Bai Cangming could not help but have a look of astonishment on his face. So, the reason why you gave them 3 contracted beasts was not because you admired them, but because you had no other choice other than to agree? Bai Cangming had previously thought that Long Yanwei had done something that was not in line with his character because he admired Bailey Hongzhuang and the others to the extreme. However, he did not expect that this was not Long Yanwei's original intention at all, and he was actually tricked by the 4 little fellows. I do admire them, but I originally only planned to give them 1 contracted beast. I never thought that the subsequent matters would exceed my expectations. Haha, I really never thought that someone as astute as you would actually have a day like this. Bai Cangming laughed out loud without giving him any face. At the same time, Yi Zihua's face was also filled with a deep smile. At this moment he really wanted to laugh every time he mentioned it. Long Yanwei looked at the 2 people before him who did not care about their image at all, and the helplessness on his face became even more intense. The 2 of you have had enough. Although I did suffer a little this time, my admiration for them is also true. Don't you think that based on the strength that they have displayed so far, they are indeed moldable talents? Bai Cangming and Yi Zihua stopped laughing when they heard that. They nodded and said, indeed they are moldable talents. Their future achievements cannot be underestimated. Only then did Long Yanwei's expression become slightly better. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could make a name for themselves in the future, he could be considered as a talent scout. To him, the reason why he was usually reluctant to give away his contracted beasts was not because he was stingy, but because he hoped that his contracted beasts could find a good master. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could achieve good results, his contracted beasts could be considered to have found an excellent master. That was enough. Alright, speaking of which, I still don't know which 3 contracted beasts you gave them. A's eyes flickered with curiosity. He knew Long Yanwei's beasts. After all, he had always had ideas about these contracted beasts. Bi's. Ants, S's. S. Long Yanwei remained silent. It could be said that he had put in a lot of effort this time. If Bai Cangming knew that he had given away 3 of his precious contracted beasts, he could not imagine how Bai Cangming would react. Chapter 3569. As Yi Zihua finished speaking, Bai Cangming couldn't help but raise his brows and ask, you couldn't have given the extremely precious contracted beast to them, right? Otherwise they wouldn't have such a reaction. Yi Zihua gave Bai Cangming a thumbs up. You guessed right. In the next second, Yi Zihua's gaze turned towards Long Yanwei. I didn't expect you to be so generous this time. This doesn't suit your personality at all. Since he's already been cheated this time, he might as well be more generous and directly gave away the precious contracted beasts. Yi Zihua sighed. When I first heard this news I felt that it was unbelievable. Forget it. Stop keeping me in suspense. Just tell me what contracted beasts they are and satisfy my curiosity. Bai Cangming had a faint smile on his face, and his calm expression was filled with interest. Yi Zihua and Long Yanwei looked at each other before saying, these 3 contracted beasts are the deep-sea devil flood dragon. Before Yi Zihua could finish speaking, Bai Cangming interrupted him. Wait, what did you say? Bai Cangming was stunned. Deep-sea devil flood dragon? Yi Zihua nodded. That's right. It's the deep-sea devil flood dragon. Bai Cangming looked at Long Yanwei in astonishment. It can't be, right? You've always attached great importance to this demon pet egg. I've asked you for it a few times but you didn't agree. You're actually giving it to them now? Long Yanwei smiled awkwardly. No matter what, they were specially recruited by me. Since I've decided to give them something, I have to give them something that's presentable. When Long Yanwei said that, Yi Zihua and Bai Cangming were speechless. Presentable? This wasn't just presentable. This was simply too presentable. What are the remaining 2 contracted beasts? Bai Cangming continued to ask. If the difference in rank is too great, I'm afraid the other 2 will be dissatisfied, right? Yi Zihua nodded. That's exactly why the other 2 contracted beasts that Long Yanwei gave away are of similar rank. Bai Cangming's expression was already stupefied. Tell me. I'm mentally prepared. The other 2 contracted beasts are the Berserk Earth-Shattering Tiger and Mystic Fire Demon Rock. Berserk Earth-Shattering Tiger, Mystic Fire Demon Rock. Every time Yi Zihua mentioned the species of a contracted beast, Bai Cangming could not help but be shocked. Even though he already knew that the contract beasts that Long Yanwei had given to Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were extremely precious, he did not expect them to be this precious. One had to know that even if he asked Long Yanwei for a contract beast of this level, Long Yanwei would not agree no matter what. He never expected that Long Yanwei would give it to the 4 rookies so easily. He felt that it was unfair. In the next moment, Bai Tsangming looked directly at Long Yanwei. At the same time, Long Yanwei had a bad premonition. Long Yanwei, I remember that I asked you for the mysterious fire demon rock before. However, you kept saying that you would keep it and refused to give it to me. Now, you gave it to someone else so easily. Shouldn't you give me an explanation? Bai Tsangming raised his eyebrows and looked straight at Long Yanwei. Obviously, he would not let the matter rest if the latter did not give him an explanation. Chapter 3570. I'm also recruiting talents for you, so it's only right for me to pay a price. After all, you're the one who's benefiting in the end. Long Yanwei spoke slowly, but the more he spoke, the less his tone sounded because Bai Tsangming's gaze was not so friendly. I usually ask you for contract beasts because I want to nurture talents. Why haven't I seen you being so generous? Bai Tsangming would not let this matter go just because of Long Yanwei's words. After all, he was the dignified palace master of the Penglai Palace, right? It was already so difficult to ask him for a contract beast on a daily basis. Now that a few newcomers had obtained such an honor, he was very indignant as the palace master. Long Yanwei could not help but look at Yizihua, hoping that Yizihua could help him. However, Yizihua only gave Long Yanwei a look that said, "Good luck." At a time like this he could not help Long Yanwei. After all, he understood Bai Tsangming's character very well. At a time like this, no matter what others said, it was useless. It seemed that if Long Yanwei did not bleed a little, this matter would not come to an end. Long Yanwei felt helpless. He was somewhat prepared for this situation, and an expression as if he was facing death unflinchingly surfaced on his face. Tell me, which of my contract beasts have you taken a fancy to? As Long Yanwei's voice fell, the seriousness on Bai Tsangming's face quickly turned into a smile. I have indeed taken a fancy to a few of your contract beasts. A few contract beasts. Long Yanwei suddenly regretted it. Was it wrong of him to recruit Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3? After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 left the bedchamber, they went to the inner hall. After asking someone to help pass the message, they saw Ren Ziheng, Ren Zimei, and Chu Jinfeng quickly walking towards them. After seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 were safe and sound, Ren Ziheng and the other 2 could not help but heave a sigh of relief. However, they were still worried and asked, "Are they all right?" Di Beichen nodded, "Everything is fine." Hearing this, Ren Ziheng and the others finally relaxed and said, "Aren't you guys a little too bold? Master Long has already personally gone and you actually dared to kill. Fortunately, Master Long's character is not bad, and he admires you guys very much. Otherwise, the consequences would be very serious." When they saw that scene earlier, they couldn't help but be shocked. Once Long Yanwei got angry, they might be chased out of the Penglai Palace. Even if he was not driven out of Penglai Palace, such a serious punishment was unavoidable. Now they finally understood that Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 were truly skilled and daring. They could even do such a thing. If they were in Bailey Hongzhuang's group, they probably wouldn't have the guts to do so. "I'm really sorry for making you guys worry about us," Bailey Hongzhuang said with a smile. At this moment, Chu Jinfeng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a face full of smiles and said, "Speaking of which, don't you guys owe us an explanation?" As soon as he said this, Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 could not help but look at each other. They quickly understood what Chu Jinfeng was talking about. "It was indeed our fault for hiding it from you earlier," Di Beichen said slowly. "We apologize to you." Chapter 3571. Looking at the apologetic faces of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, Chu Jinfeng could not help but chuckle. "I'm just joking. You don't have to take it so seriously." "That's right. We also know about your situation in the outer hall. It's normal that you didn't tell us your true identities." A gentle smile appeared on Ren Zimei's face. "If it were us, I'm afraid we wouldn't tell the truth either." Seeing that Ren Ziheng and the other 2 did not seem to mind at all, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 breathed a sigh of relief. After this interaction, they really treated Ren Ziheng and the other 2 as friends. If they were angry because of this and ended this friendship, it would be a pity. Speaking of which, I didn't expect the 4 of you to be the cultivators that have been spreading like wildfire in the outer palace. However, after we found out about it, we thought that other than the 4 of you, no one else is worthy of Lord Long's expectations. Ren Ziheng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 with admiration. When he knew that Master Long had given 3 contract beasts to 4 unknown outer hall cultivators, he was also very shocked. This was because he had been in Penglai Palace for a long time. Naturally, he knew the conditions required for Master Long to give a contract beast. Even an ordinary inner hall disciple could not achieve it. For an outer hall disciple, it was even more impossible. When he first heard the news, he thought it must be a mistake. When he found out that it was true, he became even more curious. However, after personally seeing the abilities of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, he felt that Master Long's choice was not wrong. The four of them were indeed worthy. He even felt that with the current abilities of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, there was no need to continue staying in the outer hall. There was no problem at all for them to become inner hall disciples. It was just that their current cultivation had not reached the standard of an inner hall disciple. However, their combat power was not inferior to an inner hall disciple at all. Just this point alone was enough to prove their excellence. Hearing Ren Ziheng's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three smiled faintly. "It's great that you're not angry with us. We're relieved. Before we came here we were worried about this problem," Shengguan Yingying said with a smile as if she was relieved. Following Shengguan Yingying's words, the smiles in the eyes of Ren Ziheng and the other two deepened. At the very least, this proved that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three genuinely treated them as friends. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been so worried. "How could we be so petty?" Chu Jinfeng put a hand on Di Beichen's shoulder and said, "We won't take such a small matter to heart. I know you're not a stingy person." Xiren laughed. Di Beichen looked at the sky and suggested, "It's getting late. Why don't we go to a restaurant outside and have a chat? It's not convenient to stand here and talk." Ren Ziheng nodded. "All right, we were originally waiting here for you to leave together." Immediately after, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, along with Ren Ziheng and the other two, walked out of Penglai Palace together. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three left with Long Yanwei, the cultivators in the outer hall had many speculations. If an ordinary person said this, Chu Jinfeng would definitely refute. However, the person who said this was Ren Zimei, so he could only shrug his shoulders. "Ihi, can't you allow me to be envious?" The seven of them walked all the way to an extremely famous restaurant outside Penglai Palace. After ordering a sumptuous meal, they sat down and talked in detail. Before, in the training ground, everyone's spirits had been in a state of tension. Although they would occasionally joke around, after that battle the relationship between them had obviously become much closer. It was completely different from before. Chapter 3573. After Duan Huali returned to the inner palace, he went straight to his residence to rest. After staying in the training grounds for such a long time, he felt uncomfortable all over. After resting for a while, he could not help but think of Bailey Hongzhuang. He had to admit that although he had seen countless women, Bailey Hongzhuang had a special kind of attraction to him. Just thinking about it made him feel restless. He immediately went out to find a woman to vent his desire. The next day, after Duan Huali returned, he was thinking about how to make Bailey Hongzhuang fall in love with him. He had never met a woman that interested him so much, and he did not want to force himself on her. He only wanted Bailey Hongzhuang to fall in love with him from the bottom of her heart. Therefore he had to use some methods. After thinking about it, he still felt that he should wait for a while. Perhaps Bailey Hongzhuang would come to him herself. If there was still no movement, it would not be too late for him to make his move then. After all, with his status, it was easy for him to find trouble with a few outer palace disciples. Moreover, Di Beichen was so arrogant in front of him. No matter what, he had to teach Di Beichen a lesson. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three returned to the outer palace, they cultivated in their residence for a while. Originally, they planned to go to the training grounds of the outer palace disciples to earn some points. However, they did not expect to go to the wrong place. Although they killed many skeletons in the training grounds of the inner palace disciples, they were not inner palace disciples. Naturally, they did not have any achievements. Therefore, they could only go to the training grounds of the outer palace disciples to earn points. However, before that, Bailey Hongzhuang had some other plans. "Let's stay here for a few days to cultivate for the time being. At the same time, we can also train in the oceanic world," Di Beichen said slowly. For the current them, there were many places for them to train in, so they were not in a hurry. "No problem. It's all the same to me. However, let's go to the training grounds of the outer palace disciples earlier and earn some points. On one hand, we'll be able to obtain some heavenly treasures and earthly treasures that we want. On the other hand, we'll be able to shut those fellows up." When Xiren shrugged his shoulders. He did not care too much about these things. However, all the outer palace disciples had treated them as lucky people and neglected their true strength. This made him feel a little unhappy. There's no need to be in such a hurry. So what if they think we're lucky? The truth will shut them up sooner or later. Di Baichen smiled faintly. He knew what these people were thinking, so he didn't mind. That's true. Do you have any plans? When Xiren's eyes flashed with excitement. Di Baichen must have his own reasons for suddenly bringing up this matter. It's nothing. This time, senior brother Ren and the others have helped us a lot. In addition, we did deceive them previously. After all, we still feel guilty. I want to make some healing medicine for them before we leave. This way they'll have more insurance when they go to the training grounds next time. Not only that, I also plan to make some explosives. These things often have a good effect. It'll be safer to bring some with us. Chapter 3574. Upon hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, when Xiren nodded. You're right. The dark energy in the training grounds of the Inner Palace disciples is simply too terrifying. The destructive power it has on my wounds is also extraordinarily great. These wounds on my body have yet to heal. As he spoke, Xiren could not help but look at the wound on his arm. Under such a dangerous situation, it was impossible for him not to be injured. However, after using the healing medicine, his wound had not completely healed, even though it was no longer a big problem. If this had happened during normal times, it would have been impossible. This showed how terrifying the destructive power of the dark energy was. Senior brother Ren and the others have no way to buy this healing medicine. It's great to prepare some for them. Shengguan Yingying agreed. She had a very good impression of Ren Ziheng and the others. Now that they had become friends, she naturally hoped that they would be safe. Furthermore, they had made so many enemies in the outer palace. Now that they finally had a few friends, they would naturally cherish them. That's right. Di Baichen smiled faintly. I think that if they get their hands on this healing medicine, they would be very happy. Hongzhuang, you should also prepare more of the bombs you used last time. I think that it's simply a great killing machine. It's the best thing to use in a group attack. If I had known that you had such a powerful bomb, I would have thrown it out the last time we were surrounded. The effect would have been even more shocking. Xiren's eyes flashed with excitement. Just thinking about the destructive power of the bombs on the skeletons last time made him feel exhilarated. Following Xiren's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two could not help but look at each other. The commotion they had caused was already very troublesome. If they had really used the bombs back then, the entire outer palace would have been razed to the ground. They believed that if that had really happened, the palace master would not forgive them so easily. I'll prepare more. There's no harm in being prepared. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a sweet smile. She could not help but think of Nangong Wu. Speaking of which, she did not know anything about the bombs back then. She had only put in some effort in this area to accompany her mistress. She did not expect to have such results in the end. She really had to thank her mistress for this. In the next few days, Bailey Hongzhuang made many healing medicines and bombs while Di Baichen and the other two trained in the oceanic world. My strength has improved recently, especially after the battle with the skeleton army last time. The improvement is very obvious. A smile appeared on Xiren's face. From what I can see, although these skeletons are very annoying, the effect of increasing one's strength is not bad. If there's a chance in the future, we should go there more often. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen could not help but chuckle. Last time, Xiren had lamented how disgusting the skeleton army was. If he could, he really did not want to see it a second time. He did not expect that after tasting the sweetness of increasing one's strength, he would develop a strong interest in it. The reason why the Inner Palace disciples often go there for training is probably related to the effect of increasing one's strength. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Walking on the edge of life and death is the best way to increase one's strength. Chapter 3575. Duan Huali waited in the inner hall for a few days, but he did not see Bailey Hongzhuang come to him. He knew that Bailey Hongzhuang would not come to him for help. At the same time, this made him a little unhappy. After all, he had always been very confident in his charm. Every woman that he had expressed his goodwill to had never not taken the initiative to come to him. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang had rejected him very obviously, he did not take it to heart. After all, Di Baichen was by her side. It was normal for her to show such an attitude. It was not like he had never seen such a situation before. Women always said one thing and meant another. If he really believed what she said, then he would be a real fool. However, it was obvious that Bailey Hongzhuang was not the same as the other women he had met before. Her rejection was probably from the bottom of her heart. Although this gave Duan Huali a sense of defeat, it also aroused his competitive spirit. Since Bailey Hongzhuang was not willing to be his woman, then if he succeeded in making her accept him willingly, the sense of achievement would be extraordinary. Thinking of this, Duan Huali could only create some trouble for Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. When they were forced into a helpless situation, Bailey Hongzhuang would know that Di Baichen was nothing. Only he, Duan Huali, could truly protect her. He was very familiar with this method of capturing a woman's heart. Thinking of this, Duan Huali directly called Peng Kairue over. Peng Kairue was not surprised when he found out that Duan Huali was looking for him. He and Duan Huali had known each other for so long, so he knew Duan Huali's character very well. Duan Huali, you called me over because of Bailey Hongzhuang? Peng Kairue went straight to the point as soon as he entered. Hearing Peng Kairue's words, Duan Huali chuckled. Sure enough, you know me best. That's only natural. Presumably, anyone who has seen such a peerless beauty would not be able to easily forget her. It's very normal for you to be like this. Peng Kairue smiled faintly. Based on his understanding of Duan Huali, it was already beyond his expectations that the latter would wait so many days before taking action. If it were any other day, Duan Huali would have already made his move. However, it was precisely because of this that his interest in Bailey Hongzhuang was extraordinary. It was far from being comparable to any other woman in the past. After waiting for so long, there's still no movement. It seems that if we don't do something, we won't be able to capture their hearts. Duan Huali looked indifferent. We have to create some trouble for them so that Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying will come to us for help. Peng Kairue nodded. He could not help but think of Shangguan Yingying. He knew very well in his heart that if he wanted to compete for Bailey Hongzhuang, he would definitely not be able to compete with Duan Huali. On the contrary, offending Duan Huali would not do him any good. Although Shangguan Yingying was slightly inferior to Bailey Hongzhuang, she was still a peerless beauty. If he could attract her to his side, it would be excellent. What are your plans? Peng Kairue could not help but ask. Duan Huali shrugged. There's no need to think of any complicated methods to deal with these outer hall disciples. We just need to find some people to cause trouble and create some pressure for them. Once their strength is insufficient, they will be cornered. In this way, our role will naturally be revealed. Chapter 3576. Just find a few people from the outer palace to deal with this matter. Duan Huali glanced at Peng Kairue. If it's an inner palace disciple, it'll be too obvious. They'll link it to us with just a slight connection. Peng Kairue nodded. I know quite a few people from the outer palace. This matter is very simple. By the way, remember to tell them not to be too obvious. They have to find a reason to take action. Duan Huali reminded him. Since he wanted Bailey Hongzhuang to treat him as a savior, he naturally couldn't reveal any clues. If Bailey Hongzhuang and the others figured it out from the beginning, then this plan would definitely fail. I understand. Don't worry. Peng Kairue said affirmatively. However, I think there's still a problem. What problem? If they really encounter a problem that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others can't deal with, I think they won't come to us for help immediately. Instead, they'll go to Ren Ziheng and the others. Based on the friendship we saw with Ren Ziheng and the others, Ren Ziheng and the others will most likely go to help. If that's the case, I'm afraid it'll be very difficult for our plan to succeed. Although Ren Ziheng and the others weren't as strong as Duan Huali, they wouldn't have any problems dealing with the outer palace disciples. As long as they took action, the trouble caused by the outer palace disciples would definitely be dealt with. Naturally, it wouldn't have anything to do with them. This was the biggest problem. Hearing Peng Kairue's words, Duan Huali finally reacted. He couldn't help but frown and fall into deep thought. Seeing Duan Huali's frown, Peng Kairue didn't say much. They had to think of a solution before they could take action. Ren Ziheng and the others should be going to the training ground in a few days, right? Duan Huali was silent for a moment before he slowly said. Peng Kairue thought for a moment and said, they always rest for a while before returning. However, I'm not sure how long they'll be resting for this time. Think of a way to find out. It's best if we act after they leave. It'll be more convenient, Duan Huali said in a deep voice. Based on the current situation, Ren Ziheng and the others were indeed a problem. Obviously, it was impossible to get rid of them, so they could only let them leave. I rarely deal with them on weekdays. Peng Kairue frowned, but he still nodded. I will find someone else to ask. All right. Duan Huali replied. Find a few people and tell them that you need to form a team. Then take them with you and leave together. It's best to leave in the next 2 days. I'll find someone to try. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were cultivating in the room. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. When they opened the door they saw that it was Ren Ziheng and the others. Upon seeing them, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a smile. "Senior brother Ren, what brings you here today?" "We're here to say hello to you. We're preparing to leave for the training ground tomorrow." Ren Ziheng smiled faintly. Hearing this, Di Beichen raised his eyebrows. "Didn't I hear that you planned to rest for a while before leaving? Why are you planning to leave so soon?" Chapter 3577. Listening to Ren Zimei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three could not help but nod as they understood. In Penglai Palace, when they went to the training grounds, they often needed to form a team. After all, the possibility of encountering danger with just a few people was very high. Moreover, the training grounds of the inner palace disciples were not ordinary dangers. They believed that the strength of the people who formed the team this time should be good. Otherwise, Ren Ziheng and the other two would not have decided to go to the training grounds so soon. "I see." Shangguan Yingying smiled. "Then you have to be more careful on this trip. After experiencing it, I found that the training grounds are really not ordinary dangers." As Shangguan Yingying's voice fell, Ren Ziheng and the other two could not help but look at each other, and then they could not help but chuckle. "Don't worry, we have been to the training grounds many times, so we are quite experienced. Of course, the premise is that we will not be so unlucky as last time to be surrounded by the skeleton army." Chu Jinfeng added. "Are you free now?" Ren Ziheng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three and asked, "If you are free, why don't we go out for a drink? The next time we meet will be at least half a month later." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three nodded and said, "Of course, no problem." Although they had only known each other for a short time, it did not affect the friendship between them at all. Perhaps it was because they had experienced life and death together that their friendship was particularly strong. The seven of them drank to their heart's content in the restaurant. Normally, everyone would spend their time on cultivation. Thus, this rare moment of relaxation made them feel exceptionally comfortable. "You are also planning to go to the training grounds in a few days, right?" Ren Ziheng looked at Di Beichen. "The training grounds of the outer palace disciples are also very good. It is very helpful for improving one's strength." Di Beichen nodded. "Indeed, we are preparing to leave in a few days." Originally, after Bailey Hongzhuang had prepared the things they needed, they were ready to leave for the training grounds. However, before that, Master Long found them to help them improve the growth rate of their contracted beasts. Therefore they had to stay in the Penglai Palace for the time being. They would only be able to set off for training after a few days. However, compared to spending more time in the Penglai Palace, it would be best if their contract beasts could make some progress. Generally speaking, contract beasts needed a long time to grow. However, as a contractor, Master Long knew a lot about contract beasts. When they were young, he could use some methods to speed up their growth. This way, the contract beasts could quickly become the right-hand men of Di Beichen and the others. "I hope that all of you will be able to break through and become inner hall disciples soon. At that time, we will be able to train together again." Ren Zimei smilingly said. "We will work hard." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. At this moment, Xiren and Chu Jinfeng had already gathered together. "Chu Jinfeng, how are you doing now?" As he spoke, Xiren could not help but glance at Ren Zimei. He had not forgotten about this matter. Hearing this, a smile appeared in Chu Jinfeng's eyes, revealing a bit of cunning. "Not bad. Although I have not completely succeeded, I am very confident." Xiren raised his eyebrows. "Brother, I really did not misjudge your strength." Chapter 3578. When Xiren chuckled, "That's right. After all, I've been married to my wife for a long time. I have some understanding of women. Next time when I succeed, I'll treat you to a drink when I come back." Chu Jinfeng smiled. "Then I'll be waiting for your good news. I believe it should be soon." Chu Jinfeng patted his chest and said, "Of course." However, on the other side, Ren Zimei and Shangguan Yingying's gazes could not help but fall on Chu Jinfeng and his companion. They only felt that the two of them together were indescribably wretched. "What are you talking about?" Ren Zimei could not help but ask. She had a faint bad feeling in her heart and seemed to be able to guess the general content of their conversation. Hearing Ren Zimei's question, Chu Jinfeng hurriedly put away the wretched look on his face and replaced it with a serious look. "Nothing, I'm just introducing the characteristics of the training grounds of the outer palace disciples. This way when they go they won't be completely clueless." Ren Zimei frowned. "Are you telling the truth?" "If not, what else can I say?" Chu Jinfeng asked in return. Seeing this, Renzime retracted her gaze. When Xiren could not help but give Chu Jinfeng a thumbs up, "Your ability to lie has been getting better and better recently. Compared to you, there's still a gap." When Xiren suddenly felt that his image seemed to have been greatly reduced. Whether it was in front of Di Baichen or Chu Jinfeng, he seemed to have become such a wretched image. This was not his original intention. "Senior brother Rin, you're about to head to the training grounds this time. I've also prepared some things for you." With an elegant smile on her delicate and beautiful face, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly took out a Qingquan bag and handed it to Ren Ziheng. "There are some healing medicines in here. It should be of some help to you when you go to the training grounds." Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Ren Ziheng and the other two could not help but be stunned. They did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would actually prepare things for them. "Healing medicine?" Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "That's right. Although these medicines can't heal the wound immediately, they are still better than ordinary medicines." Could it be the healing medicine sold by the Devil Training Tower? Chu Jinfeng reacted immediately. This healing medicine was in short supply in their Penglai Palace. At this time they also wanted to buy some more, but they were completely out of stock. If they wanted to buy it, they would have to wait for a while. However, based on their current situation, they obviously didn't have the time to wait. "No, this is another kind of healing medicine, but the effect should be better than that healing medicine," Bailey Hongzhuang said. Ever since she had witnessed the destructive power of the skeleton army, she had gained some understanding of the dark force. Although she had yet to find a way to completely resolve the damage caused by the dark force, she had made some improvements based on the original healing medicine. She believed that the healing medicine she made now would be more effective than the previous healing medicine, but it still wouldn't be able to heal the wounds immediately. Chapter 3579. You said that this kind of healing medicine is better than the healing medicine from the Magic Refining Tower? Even with Ren Ziheng's calm personality, he couldn't help but be stunned for a moment after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words. He only felt that he must have heard wrongly. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's next words made him understand that he didn't hear wrongly. "Yes." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. "According to my judgment, it should be like this. You will know when you try it." She was very confident in the healing medicine she had concocted. Since the last time she realized that the healing medicine she had made before was better than the ordinary healing medicine, she carefully considered the ingredients and finally added the medicinal materials that she thought were effective in restraining the dark power. Not only that, she also increased the proportion of these medicinal materials. Perhaps it wouldn't be better for ordinary wounds, but for wounds caused by the dark power, it would definitely have a better effect than before. Bailey Hongzhuang's elegant and delicate little face was filled with confidence. Ren Ziheng and the other two looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, who was so confident. Although they had some doubts in their hearts, they still didn't say anything. They really couldn't figure out how Bailey Hongzhuang determined that this healing medicine would definitely have a better effect. According to the judgment of the entire Penglai Palace's cultivators, the healing medicine from the Magic Refining Tower was already the best healing medicine to deal with the dark power. In addition, they had never heard of any healing medicine that would have a better effect. Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly took out such a healing medicine and vowed that it would definitely have a better effect. How could they not feel strange in their hearts? However, after thinking of Bailey Hongzhuang's identity as a doctor, they understood. It must be the healing medicine that Bailey Hongzhuang concocted after seeing the dark power. It was just that they didn't know where Bailey Hongzhuang's confidence came from. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang was young. Although her medical skills were very good, it was impossible for her to concoct such a level of healing medicine. If Bailey Hongzhuang could make such an effective healing medicine at her age, then the doctors of 100 Flowers Gate should really commit suicide by disembowelment. Having said that, Ren Ziheng and the other two didn't speak out their thoughts. No matter what, this was Bailey Hongzhuang's kindness to them. "Then thank you, junior sister Bailey. We happen to be lacking healing medicine." Ren Ziheng's face was full of smiles and his eyes were filled with gratitude. Although Ren Ziheng and the other two concealed it very well, Bailey Hongzhuang still noticed the flash of hesitation on their faces. In her heart, she had already guessed their thoughts, but she didn't care about it. Thinking about it, if a young woman said such words to her, she would also have doubts in her heart. However, she believed that when Ren Ziheng and the others came back the next time, this trace of doubt in their hearts would completely dissipate. Di Baichen and the others were also smart people. They naturally understood the problem and couldn't help but feel very interested. If Ren Ziheng and the others knew that the healing medicine they had been looking for was made by Bailey Hongzhuang, they probably wouldn't have such an expression now. Chapter 3580. The group of 7 drank to their heart's content in the restaurant and only returned to the Penglai Palace after nightfall. The next day, Duan Huali learned that Ren Ziheng and the others had left Penglai Palace, and he couldn't help but feel a burst of joy. Finally he got rid of these eyesores. Without these guys, it would be much easier for him to deal with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. He had already thought about it in his heart. He could let go of the others, but he must teach Di Beichen a lesson. This guy dared to embarrass him in front of everyone. If he didn't teach him a lesson, it wouldn't be in line with his personality. He must let this fearless guy know that there was always someone better than him, so that he wouldn't continue to be so arrogant in the future. Well done. Ren Ziheng and the others didn't find any clues, right? Duan Huali looked at Peng Kairui in front of him, his deep black eyes flashing with a dark and deep light. Peng Kairui nodded. I found a cultivator who has a good relationship with them. They have also teamed up with them before, so they didn't suspect anything. Hearing this, Duan Huali's face lit up with satisfaction. That's good. In this way our plan is foolproof. It will take half a month for those guys to come back. This period of time is enough for us to complete all of this. Yes. Peng Kairui's face also showed a smile. During this period of time, when he thought of Shangguan Yingying, he also felt a little itchy. After all, it didn't feel good to be able to see something but not have it. Our next plan can also start. Duan Huali raised his eyebrows, and the scheming light in his eyes became brighter and brighter. I'll arrange for someone to act. Peng Kairui quickly said. Inside the house. Senior brother Ren and the others have set off for the training place today. Ziren said slowly. Shangguan Yingying looked at Ren Ziheng and said, by the way, what were you and senior brother Chu talking about yesterday? Ziren couldn't help but be stunned and then said, didn't senior brother Chu already say it yesterday? You guys can only lie to senior sister Ren. Shangguan Yingying pursed her lips. I've been with you for so long. How could I not know your character? Seeing that Shangguan Yingying had already seen through everything, when Ziren felt a little helpless. He then nodded and said, okay, actually it's nothing. I just wanted to ask about his progress with senior sister Ren. Shangguan Yingying's eyes lit up. How's the progress? Aren't you not interested in this? When Ziren looked at Shangguan Yingying in surprise. Previously, when he was talking to senior brother Ren about this, Shangguan Yingying was very dissatisfied with his approach. He did not expect her to be so concerned about this matter. I'm just afraid that you'll mess things up. You'll be in trouble. Shangguan Yingying said calmly, tell me, did you mess things up? In her heart, she also hoped that Chu Jinfeng and Ren Zimei could become a couple, but she was also worried that if they failed, then their relationship with Ren Zimei would be somewhat awkward. Chapter 3581. As Ziren's voice fell, Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. The corners of her lips unconsciously rose a little, but she quickly reacted and immediately restrained her smile. Di Fan usually doesn't see how powerful you are. What's the use of having good eyesight in this aspect? Could it be that your goal is to be a matchmaker? When Ziren, who was originally very proud of himself, immediately became embarrassed when he heard the word matchmaker. Matchmaker. When Ziren's face fell, I'm a man, okay? I don't know, maybe I've been wrong all along. Shangguan Yingying shrugged as if she didn't think so. Looking at Shangguan Yingying like this, when Ziren secretly decided that he must restore the masculinity of a man tonight. He must make Shangguan Yingying admit that he was a real man. Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang looked at this pair of buffoons and felt that it was funny. You can stop talking about this. If you continue like this, it's not suitable for children. Di Beichen slowly said. Shangguan Yingying was slightly stunned when she heard this. Then, her cheeks flushed red and she glared at Ziren. I'm too lazy to talk to you. Ziren looked at Di Beichen and pointed at himself. This is what Beichen said. Why are you blaming me? However, Shangguan Yingying didn't intend to pay attention to Ziren at all. Seeing this, Ziren looked at Di Beichen again. Di Beichen calmly spread out his hands. For words were clearly written on his handsome face. I'm innocent. It's been some time since you handed the contract to Master Long. I believe it should be completed in 2 days? Bailey Hongzhuang thought about it and said slowly. Di Beichen nodded. Yes, according to what Master Long said, that is indeed the case. If a contracted beast enters the growth stage, it will be of great help to you in battle. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. This was undoubtedly excellent news for them. She did not expect Master Long to have such a method. When she heard Master Long mention this, she couldn't help but be startled. She had never heard of such a method before, but this would be a great help to them. I'm really curious about how strong my berserk earth-shattering tiger will be once it reaches adulthood. Xiren's eyes were filled with interest. In the past, he had not been able to find a suitable contract beast. Now that he had the berserk earth-shaking tiger, he was extremely happy. Initially, he had been wondering when the berserk earth-shattering tiger would be able to fight alongside him. He did not expect that the opportunity would come so soon. He was really looking forward to it. When they come back, we'll go to the training ground to test it out. We'll know then. Di Baichen chuckled. I think Ying Ying's deep-sea devil serpent is the strongest on this island. Hearing Di Baichen's words, Shangguan Ying Ying smiled. That's because of the location. Deep-sea devil serpents are good at fighting in the sea. Peng Kairui confidently went to the outer hall to find cultivators to fight Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. However, the final result was completely out of his expectations, because his suggestion had been rejected. Chapter 3582. Peng Kairui was confident that his offer was extremely generous and there was no possibility of rejection. Therefore, when he heard the other party's rejection at this moment, he was a little stunned for a while. Senior brother Peng, it's not that I don't want to do this, but I don't dare. Xue Changdong looked at Peng Kairui helplessly. Peng Kairui's offer was very generous. When he first heard it, he was very excited. He was just going to make trouble for a few people. Moreover, it was not the first time he helped Peng Kairui deal with a female disciple of the outer hall. However, when he heard Peng Kairui mention who the other party was, he felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over him. He no longer felt as excited as before. His strength in the outer hall was very outstanding. Even in the entire outer hall, there were few people he did not dare to offend. However, the person Peng Kairui was talking about at this moment was one of the people he did not dare to offend. Bailey Hongzhuang? What a joke. How obvious was Master Long's protective attitude a few days ago. They dared to kill people in front of Master Long. Was there anything in the outer hall that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three dared not do? Since that incident, almost all the cultivators had decided that no matter who they offended in the outer palace, they shouldn't offend Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. After all, with Master Long as their backer, they were not qualified to mess with Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three unless they did not want to live. Why? Peng Kairui frowned. He could not understand. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were just practitioners who had just joined the Penglai Palace. It was easy to deal with them. With Xue Changdong's ability, it was as easy as blowing off dust. However, Xue Changdong was telling him that he did not dare? Senior brother Peng, don't tell me you don't know their backer? Xue Changdong looked at Peng Kairui in surprise. Now in the entire outer hall of the Penglai Palace, I'm afraid that no one dares to be their enemy. Otherwise it's purely asking for trouble. Backer? Peng Kairui was stunned. What backer do they have? Do they have relatives in the inner hall? Xue Changdong shook his head. Senior brother Peng, they made such a big commotion a few days ago. It can be said that it caused a sensation in the entire Penglai Palace. Don't you know? I don't know. Peng Kairui's face turned ugly. Tell me what's going on. If Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 really had a backer, then this matter would become much more troublesome. However, thinking up to this point, Peng Kairui suddenly understood why Ren Ziheng and the others would chase after Bailey Hongzhuang's group so much. It must have something to do with the backer behind them. Their backer is Master Long. Xue Changdong said, Senior brother Peng, if you haven't heard about them, how do you know about them? Lord Long? Peng Kairui didn't care about the culture behind Xue Changdong's words. The only thing in his mind was Master Long. Just the fact that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 Inner Palace disciples had the backing of the 4 Inner Palace disciples was already difficult enough. However, he was now being told that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 Inner Palace disciples' backing was Lord Long? How could their backer be Master Long? Chapter 3583. Listening to Xue Changdong's words, the doubts in Peng Kairui's heart grew stronger. He had never cared much about the affairs of the outer hall, so he did not know anything about this. However, just from Xue Changdong's expression, he could see that everything the former said was true. If not, Xue Changdong had no reason to refuse at all. I didn't know about this. Peng Kairui's face was a little ugly. He never thought that there would be such a problem. It really disrupted their plan. Senior brother Peng, this matter was so sensational a few days ago. You didn't hear anything about it? Shui Changdong was a little incredulous. Now, almost everyone in Penglai Palace knew about this matter. He did not expect Peng Kairui to not know about it at all. Looking at Shui Changdong's incredulous expression, Peng Kairui was a little embarrassed. He had worked hard for so many days in the training ground. After returning, he only cared about himself and did not pay attention to other things at all. Even if senior brother Peng doesn't know about the matter of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 killing people a few days ago, you should have heard that they obtained 3 contract beasts from Master Long as an Outer Hall disciple. Not only that, the 4 of them killed more than 100 Outer Hall disciples, and the strength of 100 disciples decreased because of them. Senior brother Peng, have you not heard of this news? Shui Changdong asked. Although his strength was very outstanding in the Outer Hall, he had to admit that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were really amazing people in the Outer Hall. Just the combat power that they had shown before was enough for him to not dare to be enemies with them easily. 4 people against 100 cultivators. He asked himself honestly he could not achieve such a result. As Shui Changdong's voice fell, Peng Kairui could not help but be stunned. Then, a strong light of disbelief appeared in his eyes. You mean the 4 of them are the 4 people that are spreading all over the Outer Hall? Yes. Shui Changdong nodded. Senior brother Peng, so you have heard of them. Although the 4 of them just came to Penglai Palace not long ago, there are very few people who have not heard of their reputation. At this moment, Peng Kairui was completely dumbfounded. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 would actually be the 4 Outer Palace disciples that were extremely mysterious. Even though he was an Inner Palace disciple, he was still extremely shocked when he heard about the battle results of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. He only felt that the 4 of them were simply prodigies. Being besieged by so many Outer Palace disciples at the same time, even he would not be able to survive. However, these 4 Outer Palace disciples that had just joined were able to do so. This was simply a miracle. Therefore, even in the Inner Palace, these 4 disciples had quite a reputation. Almost everyone was certain that these 4 cultivators were absolutely incredible. It wouldn't be long before they became disciples of the Inner Palace. Moreover, given some time, they would definitely become extremely powerful experts of the Inner Palace in the future. In the past, Peng Kairui had always been curious about these 4 cultivators. However, he had only heard of their battle records and did not know much about their names. After all, before he had truly become an Inner Palace disciple, he would not have the slightest bit of interaction with them. However, when the identities of these 4 experts and Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 overlapped, the situation became much more complicated. Chapter 3584. When Shui Changdong saw that Peng Kairui had started to daydream, he could not help but say, Big brother Peng, I don't mean to say this, but based on the current situation, I'm afraid that no one in the entire Outer Palace would dare to attack the 4 of them, at least for the time being. On one hand, they were wary of the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. On the other hand, they were also afraid of Master Long. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 did not receive any punishment for offending Master Long's dignity, but that did not mean that they could do the same. If they were the main characters, Master Long would have chased them out long ago. Hearing this, Peng Kairui nodded. He also understood that Shui Changdong was telling the truth. After all, if all of this was true, then ordinary people would not dare to attack Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. That would definitely be asking for trouble. I understand. I'll think about this carefully. Peng Kairui slowly said. Now that the situation had changed, he had to go back and discuss it with Duan Huali. Duan Huali was in a very good mood. When he thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would soon become his woman, he could not help but feel happy. Furthermore, when the time came, he would be able to see Di Baichen's sad expression. That would be very satisfying. This kind of thing was as easy as blowing off dust to him. This was the advantage of being powerful. Just as Duan Huali was having a beautiful dream, a knock suddenly came from outside the door. The smile on Duan Huali's face immediately became even more brilliant. Peng Kairui must have arranged everything. However, when he opened the door and saw Peng Kairui's complicated expression, Duan Huali could not help but frown. Why do you have such an expression? Could it be that things did not go smoothly? We made a mistake in our judgment of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. Now it seems that it won't be easy to deal with them. Peng Kairui's voice was slightly heavy, and his face was filled with helplessness. Duan Huali's gaze quietly darkened. What do you mean by that? Do we need to think more about dealing with a few Outer Palace disciples? Peng Kairui shook his head. they're not ordinary outer palace disciples. What does that mean? Duan Huali was puzzled. 4 inner palace disciples like them, outer palace disciples were the same as ordinary cultivators outside the Penglai palace. There was no difference at all. You should have heard of the cultivator who obtained 3 of Master Long's contracted beasts from the outer palace, right? Peng Kairui asked slowly. Hearing this, Duan Huali was stunned. His gloomy eyes paused for a moment before a trace of astonishment surged up. You can't be talking about the 4 of them, right? That's right, it's them. Peng Kairui replied with certainty. According to the information I've gathered, Master Long seems to admire them a lot. He's obviously biased towards them. That's why the cultivators of the outer palace don't dare to attack the 4 of them. They're afraid that they'll attract trouble. After all, offending Master Long is an extremely unwise decision. Duan Huali's expression changed. He never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 would have such an identity. It was completely beyond his expectations. Previously, he had also heard of the battle results of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. At that time, he had lamented that a few more amazing people had appeared in the outer palace. Even when he was an outer palace disciple back then, he could not have done that. Chapter 3585. Based on Di Beichen's age and strength, he does indeed have the right to be arrogant. The way I see it, we should give up on our previous plan. Otherwise, once this conflict is blown out of proportion, it won't do us any good. Peng Kairui's expression was a little complicated. If they were only ordinary cultivators, it would not be a problem for them to deal with them. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 had Long Yanwei backing them up, so they had no choice but to reconsider. He has yet to obtain a contracted beast and has always been hoping to obtain a contracted beast from Lord Long. If he offended Lord Long because of this, then his contracted beast would be completely out of the question. Compared to a woman, a contracted beast was obviously more important to him. Hearing Peng Kairui's words, Duan Huali's expression turned even uglier. He naturally understood that Peng Kairui's words were true, but he was unwilling to accept it. Ever since he had first laid eyes on Bailey Hongzhuang, he had already decided in his heart that he must make her his woman. Not being able to obtain her was something that had never happened to him before. Not only that, Di Beichen had previously humiliated him in front of so many people. If he did not get back at him, wouldn't he become a laughingstock for no reason? Based on his character, this was something that he could not accept at all. Thinking of this, Duan Huali shook his head. So what if they have Lord Long's favor? Lord Long is only treating them well because he has taken a fancy to their strength. However, our current strength is much stronger than theirs. I believe that in Lord Long's heart, our position is not lower than theirs. Seeing that Duan Huali was still unwilling to give up, Peng Kairui could not help but frown. Sigh, I feel that it's only for the sake of 2 women. It's really not worth taking such a risk. You intend to give up just like that? The gloominess in Duan Huali's eyes grew even more intense. If Peng Kairui were to withdraw just like that, then he would be left alone and this matter would be much more troublesome to deal with. Peng Kairui nodded. I still have to rely on Lord Long if I want to obtain a contracted beast. If I offend him, then I won't have any more hope. You can think of it from another perspective. Duan Huali said slowly. He did not intend to give up just like that. At the very least, he had to teach Di Beichen a lesson. What do you mean? Since Master Long appreciates the 4 of them very much, if Bailey Hongzhuang and Shengguan Yingying become our people, then our relationship with Master Long can also be pulled closer. You haven't been able to get a contract beast yet, and you don't know how long you'll have to wait. Maybe you'll be able to use this opportunity to succeed. Duan Huali's deep and dark eyes flashed. Chapter 3586. Peng Kairui's eyes gradually brightened. He felt that Duan Huali's words were not without reason. As long as there was an opportunity to get closer to Master Long, he might be able to get a contract beast that was suitable for him. But once Master Long finds out that it was us who did this, then things will be troublesome. Peng Kairui's tightly knitted brows still did not loosen. It would be good if this matter succeeded, but if it failed, even he felt that the consequences were incomparably troublesome. Hearing Peng Kairui's words, Duan Huali knew that Peng Kairui was tempted, and immediately felt relieved. So we have to think about this matter in the long run. Duan Huali muttered, as long as we do this flawlessly, then no one will be able to link this matter to us. Even so, basically no one in the outer palace dares to make a move against them. If we ask the Inner Palace disciples to do it, I'm afraid that it won't be too reliable. Besides, there's no chance at all. Peng Kairui's expression was complicated. No matter how he thought about it, he felt that the implementation of this matter was too complicated. There was no way to find a place to start. Just because they don't dare to make a move in the Outer Palace doesn't mean that they won't dare to make a move in the Outer Palace's training grounds. We don't need to make it too obvious. We just need to use the Outer Palace's training environment to quietly get rid of Di Baichen and Wen Xiren. The malicious light in Duan Huali's eyes became more and more intense. He decided to change his previous method and use another method. As long as we get rid of the two of them? Peng Kairui was a little confused, but he quickly reacted, "You're saying that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others will come to us on their own?" "That's right." Duan Huali nodded. "The reason why Bailey Hongzhuang likes Di Baichen is undoubtedly because of his looks. As long as Di Baichen dies, we can send some people to harass them. When that time comes, as long as we appear, the effect will naturally be there. The Outer Palace disciples only show their admiration for them. This can't be considered as looking for trouble. Even Master Long can't say anything. What do you think?" Peng Kairui, who originally felt that the matter was extremely troublesome, could not help but light up after hearing Duan Huali's words. He immediately clapped his hands and said, "That's right. In that case, there won't be any problems. If you seize this opportunity, it will be beneficial to you as well." Duan Huali smiled. "Then we'll discuss how exactly to deploy this matter." Immediately, the two of them gathered together to carefully think of a solution. They believed that as long as they made a good deployment, they would definitely be able to solve this problem perfectly. At that time, the two of them would have a bountiful harvest. Was? The next day, Peng Kairui went to look for Xue Changdong again. Xue Changdong's face suddenly turned bitter. He was about to reject Peng Kairui, but after carefully listening to Peng Kairui's idea, he was not in a hurry to reject immediately. "I can add 20% on top of the benefits that I originally proposed. Think about it carefully. This is not too difficult to accomplish," Peng Kairui slowly said. This time he had put in a lot of capital. After all, once it was successful, it would be double the gains. Chapter 3587. If you're not willing to accept it, I can find someone else. I'm sure there will be quite a few people who are willing to accept it. Peng Kairui's expression was indifferent. He believed that most cultivators would not reject his offer. Moreover, he was not directly offending Master Long. All he needed to do now was to quietly kill two people and use some tricks to achieve his goal. Seeing this, Xue Changdong thought for a moment before gritting his teeth and nodding, "All right. Senior Brother Peng, don't worry. I'll definitely complete this task well." Hearing Xue Changdong's reply, Peng Kairui looked satisfied. "That's good. However, Senior Brother Peng, I'll have to wait until they've gone to the training grounds before I think of a way to do it. Furthermore, if I want to do it in a natural manner, I'm afraid that I'll need some time." I'll give you enough time." Peng Kairui spoke slowly as if he had already expected all of this. "As long as you can complete this task beautifully, it doesn't matter if you spend some time. There's no need to rush." Xue Changdong sighed in relief. "I'm relieved to hear Senior Brother Peng's words. Don't worry, I'll definitely complete this task well. I believe in you." On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three walked out of the house and headed towards the teleportation formation. Today we'll be able to see what the training grounds of the Outer Palace disciples look like. A look of interest surfaced on Shangguan Yingying's face. She was always curious about new things. Xiren glanced at Shangguan Yingying. His gaze was gentle and affectionate. "After seeing the training grounds of the Inner Palace disciples, I'm sure the training grounds of the Outer Palace disciples won't be able to shock us much. I only hope to raise my strength as soon as possible so that I can return to the demonic tower and explore it." Xiren had always been interested in the demonic tower. After all, the more he understood the power of the blood aura, the more interested he was in the inheritance of the demonic tower. If he could obtain the inheritance of the demonic tower, it would greatly increase his strength. After all, it's a new place. With so many cultivators from the Outer Palace training there, it shouldn't be bad, Shangguan Yingying said with a faint smile. "Speaking of the Magic Refining Pagoda, we haven't returned to the Magic Refining Pagoda since we participated in the auction. I'm afraid Steward Qin doesn't even know where we went." Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. Originally, they planned to go back after attending the auction in Penglai Island, but they didn't expect that they would be unexpectedly recruited by Lord Long to Penglai Island. After that, they no longer had any contact with the demon refining tower. In fact, after Steward Qin returned to the magic refining pagoda, he had been waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang and the others to return. After all, he had failed to successfully bid for the medicinal herbs. No matter what, he had to give Bailey Hongzhuang and the others an explanation. At the same time, he was also thinking of other ways to obtain a new prescription from Bailey Hongzhuang. The effect of the healing medicine was simply too good. What was even more unbelievable was that it actually had a certain effect on wounds caused by the power of darkness. Ever since he discovered this effect, the healing medicine had fallen into a situation where the supply could not meet the demand. Even if he raised the price by a lot, the situation where the supply could not meet the demand did not change at all. Now, just by relying on this healing medicine, the income of the demonic tower was an extremely shocking figure. Chapter 3588. If this healing medicine was Bailey Hongzhuang's trump card, it would be fine, but Steward Qin knew very well that this healing medicine was nothing to Bailey Hongzhuang. Otherwise, Bailey Hongzhuang would not have handed over the prescription so easily. Not only that, from Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude, he could clearly see that the former definitely had a lot of prescriptions, and there were probably a lot of prescriptions that were even more effective than this healing medicine. If he could obtain the prescriptions that Bailey Hongzhuang had, the influence of the demon refining pagoda on the Penglai Island would definitely rise further. The current status of the demon refining pagoda was already very high, and the 100 Flowers Gate was also famous for their medical skills. Right now, the reputation of the demon refining pagoda was already very famous because of this healing medicine. If they could continue to develop like this, it would definitely be very shocking. However, ever since the auction he had not seen Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three return. This immediately made him dumbfounded. He had no idea where Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had gone. Countless guesses flashed through Steward Qin's mind. Could it be that they had been recruited by the 100 Flowers Gate? Just thinking about this possibility made Steward Qin feel extremely depressed. If that was really the case, then it would be impossible for him to complete his wishful thinking. Thus, during this period of time, Steward Qin had always been in a restless state of mind. However, he had waited for a long time and did not hear any news from the 100 Flowers Gate. He could not help but feel relieved. After all, if Bailey Hongzhuang was successfully recruited by the 100 Flowers Gate, then with her strength she would definitely be able to show her prowess in the 100 Flowers Gate in a short period of time, and her reputation would also spread. Since he hadn't heard any news for so long, then he probably hadn't been recruited by the 100 Flowers Gate. Then where had he gone? In my opinion, I'm afraid that Steward Qin will be very anxious if he doesn't see us go back. After all, he is very interested in Hongzhuang's prescription. Shengguan Yingying chuckled. Di Beichen raised his eyebrows and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a smile that was not a smile. That's natural. How powerful is my wife? Steward Qin is naturally unwilling to let her leave. Beichen, do you think everyone thinks that I'm as good as you? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. I'm telling the truth. You can ask them if you don't believe me, Di Beichen said calmly as if he was proud of his wife. When Xiren nodded. That's true. Hongzhuang, I'm not praising you, but you're really amazing. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were slowly walking towards the teleportation array, Shui Changdong noticed their movements and immediately went to gather his teammates. Since he had already promised Peng Kairue, he had to do it properly. Moreover, he definitely couldn't give up on such a rich profit. With those things he would have more confidence in becoming an inner hall disciple. On one hand, he also couldn't understand why Peng Kairue would spend so much money. Bailey Hongzhuang was indeed beautiful and had an incomparable attraction to men. However, the reward he gave was a little too much. Chapter 3589. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three arrived at the teleportation array again, they no longer had to worry about going to the wrong teleportation array. The four of them glanced around. There were still some outer palace disciples around them who were obviously preparing to head to the training grounds. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, the crowd's gaze could not help but stop on them for a moment before shifting away unnaturally. Now the outer palace disciples' feelings towards Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were very complicated. When they first found out that they had obtained contracted beasts, most of them were unconvinced. However, when the four of them proved everything with their strength, everyone could not help but be shocked. The cultivators whose cultivation had declined naturally hated them. The other cultivators could only secretly envy them. However, after they understood how much Master Long cared for Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, their thoughts gradually changed. With such a backer, it meant that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three would definitely have a meteoric rise in Penglai Palace in the future. If they could build a relationship with Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, it would undoubtedly be excellent. However, in the current situation, how to build a relationship with Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three was also a problem. Moreover, if their friend's strength declined due to poison, it would be difficult for them to build a relationship with them. This would be troublesome. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three did not feel the entanglement of the people around them. In any case, they had already accepted the fact that they had no friends in the outer palace. Originally, they thought that at least Li Shengkai was not an enemy. They did not expect that it was precisely because of this thought that it would harm them even more. As Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three walked out of the teleportation array, a cool breeze blew past, bringing with it a faint salty and fishy smell. Feeling this familiar sea breeze, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three could not help but look at each other. It seemed that the outer palace disciples' training ground was indeed an island. It seems that we will have to continue hunting monsters in the ocean. Shengguan Yingying sighed. Back then we were the worst at fighting on the sea. I didn't expect that this shortcoming would no longer exist. Yeah, I should be the one who changed the most. Xiren chuckled. In the past he didn't even know how to swim. Now he simply couldn't adapt. Speaking of which, it was all thanks to the oceanic world and Bailey Hongzhuang's chaos ring. Otherwise, it would have been very troublesome for them to come to this island to train. This island seems to be very safe. There's no smell of blood nearby. It seems that the hunting ground is not here, Di Beichen said slowly as he looked around. His deep and charming eyes were filled with wisdom. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. We'll just follow behind the other cultivators. When the time comes, we'll know what they're doing. The four of them looked at each other. Now they had given up on asking other cultivators. It would be awkward if they were given the cold shoulder. It was better to rely on oneself than on others. In any case, this was not a problem. Fortunately, there were also some cultivators who had just arrived. Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four maintained a certain distance from the other party, following behind them as they slowly walked forward. As they walked forward, the salty smell and the cool breeze became stronger. At the same time, they gradually saw the dark blue sea in front of them. However, the sea here was slightly different from what they had imagined. Chapter 3590. Ordinary seawater was clear and blue. At a glance, it gave people a vast and comfortable feeling. However, the seawater in the line of sight of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others gave them an inexplicable sense of oppression. This was because the seawater only appeared blue within a certain range. The rest of the seawater was a deep black. This kind of black was like ink, revealing a bit of oppression. Even just looking at it gave people a feeling of breathlessness. However, this black color was quite far from where Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were standing. They could only see the black color from a distance, but they did not understand why. Why is the seawater in the distance black? It looks so strange. Shengguan Yingying's clear and bright eyes flashed with a trace of puzzlement. The seawater is all together. Why does the color become different? Logically speaking, if the seawater is black, then everything should be black. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly. She and Di Beichen looked at each other. This situation was indeed a bit strange. The seawater should be blue. I have never heard of black seawater. This is indeed a bit strange. Di Beichen's voice was slightly heavy. Even though he had just arrived at this place, he already felt that this place was very unusual. Why is the Penglai Palace's training ground so strange? That black color shouldn't be the power of darkness, right? When Xiren secretly clicked his tongue. Now, just looking at the black color, he could not help but think of the skeleton army that appeared at night. His impression of the power of darkness was too deep. Moreover, it was difficult for people not to think of the power of darkness in this large black color. It shouldn't be. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. The power of darkness itself is a secret that has been kept by the major forces. Ordinary practitioners can't come into contact with it at all. Therefore, it is absolutely impossible for the disciples of the outer palace to come into contact with the power of darkness. There should be another reason for this black color. That's true. Xiren regained some of his senses. That black sea looks a bit strange. There's no hurry. We'll be here for a while anyway. We'll figure it out eventually. Di Beichen's expression was indifferent. Since they were already here, they might as well take things as they came. As long as they spent some time, they would figure everything out sooner or later. Speaking of which, it's because we're not popular outside. If we could make a few friends, then the situation wouldn't be so bad. We can only rely on ourselves to figure things out. When Xiren shook his head and sighed. He was usually very popular. He did not expect that he would become like this when he came to the outer hall of Penglai Palace. Even he sometimes felt a little unbelievable. Haha, just accept your fate. Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but chuckle. It's better to explore on your own than to be deceived by others. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were not in a hurry to take action. Instead, they stayed at the edge of the island and observed how the surrounding cultivators would act. Before figuring out the specific situation, it was not a wise move for them to act rashly. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and the others set off, Xue Changdong came to the training ground with his teammates. Not long after, they saw the figures of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. They're there. Chapter 3591. Brother Xue, why are they standing there without moving? Fang Tianyi looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three who were standing in front of him in confusion. There was nothing on this island at all and the training was not here. Xue Changdong also had some doubts in his heart, but after thinking about it carefully, he understood. It must be their first time coming to the training ground. They have no understanding of the situation here, so they are trying to understand the situation now. Then why don't they find someone to ask? They came here to train without knowing anything about the training ground. Isn't this a bit too exaggerated? Fang Tianyi found it hard to believe. This training ground was not an ordinary place. If they had no understanding of it and just relied on themselves to explore, the danger would be much greater. Xue Changdong chuckled. Don't you think about their popularity in the outer palace? Previously, Li Shengkai tricked them into going to the training ground of the inner palace disciples. If it weren't for their good fortune, they would have become corpses by now. Once bitten, twice shy. If you were in their shoes, would you continue to ask people after suffering such a loss? Brother Xue is right. The four of them have made so many enemies in the outer palace. In my opinion, I'm afraid they themselves can't remember all of those enemies. After all, there are more than 100 people. It's not easy to remember all of their faces. If I were in their shoes, I wouldn't ask people to ask. If I'm unlucky and ask my enemies, wouldn't that be asking for trouble? I suddenly sympathize with them a little. Fang Tianyi couldn't help but sigh. In this dangerous training ground, it was a lot of trouble to rely on oneself to explore. Why are you thinking so much? We just need to complete the task and get the rewards. Xue Changdong looked indifferent. He was not in the mood to sympathize with Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. With Master Long's protection, the four of them did not have to worry about their development in the Penglai Palace. Everyone knew in their hearts that they would inevitably become inner palace disciples in the future. On the contrary, they still needed to work hard to join the inner palace. Therefore, they were not qualified to sympathize with them. Then what should we do now? They stay here and don't move. Do we stay here too? Fang Tianyi could not help but ask. According to my judgment, it's impossible for them to take action today. If we stay here, it will only arouse their suspicion. It's better to go train first and dispel their doubts. After that, we can take the opportunity to think of a way to take action. Xue Changdong's eyes flashed with a wise light. He was very clear that once this matter was done, it must be done 100%. So he did not need to be in a hurry. He believed that he would find the right time. Hearing Xue Changdong's words, the cultivators in the team looked at each other and then nodded one after another. Brother Xue, you're really far-sighted. This is the safest way. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three stayed at the seaside for a while, and then simply sat down on the ground. Their eyes constantly fell on the cultivators who were leaving. Judging from the others' actions, they could determine the way to gain experience here. Gradually, they began to understand the situation. Chapter 3592. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. There are quite a few islands in front of us. From what I can see, these people seem to be heading towards all the islands. They had been sitting here for a whole day, enduring the attention of the crowd. However, there were quite a few teams that came here during this period of time. Almost none of the teams stayed on the island they were on. Hence, they seemed to be in a league of their own. From the direction these teams were heading, she could see that they were all heading towards different islands and not the same place. In my opinion, we should be able to go to any island, right? Xiren raised his eyebrows. Everyone is heading in different directions. We can't determine the pattern. Why don't we just go to any island? We'll know when we get there. At worst, we'll just have to deal with monsters. We've already come to the training grounds of the Inner Palace disciples. Why should we be afraid of this place? Shangguan Yingying looked indifferent. To her, it didn't matter which island they went to, it was just to hunt monsters. Don't be impatient. Let's observe for a while. If there's not much difference between the islands, we'll set off immediately, Di Beichen said. After careful observation by Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, the four of them vaguely noticed the subtle differences between the islands. According to my judgment, the islands on the left should be relatively less dangerous. The monsters near the islands on the right should be stronger. The next day, after the sky cleared up, Di Beichen slowly stood up and faced the golden sun. The bright light sprinkled on his body, adding a trace of nobility to his already heroic figure. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint smile. Her thoughts were the same as Di Beichen's. She realized that the cultivators heading to the islands on the left were generally weaker than the ones on the right. Although they were all Outer Palace disciples, the difference in strength between the cultivators was not small. Their cultivation of the 5th level of the Purple Realm was definitely the basic cultivation in the Outer Palace. Almost all the cultivators here were stronger than them. Most of the Outer Palace disciples were between the 5th level of the Purple Realm and the 8th level of the Purple Realm. After some observation, she discovered that most of the cultivators heading to the right island were at least at the 7th or 8th level of the Purple Realm. What should we do now? Shangguan Yingying looked at Di Beichen. Shall we head to the island on the left? Di Beichen thought for a while and nodded. Let's go there and learn about it first. Then we'll see which island is more suitable for us to train on. Their main purpose for coming here was not to earn points, but to better hone their abilities and further improve their cultivation. Therefore, if the strength of the demonic beast was of no use to them, then there was no use for them to stay here. They had to find some demonic beast that could challenge them in order to be effective. Then let's go. When Xiren also stood up. After being blown by the sea breeze for so long, I also want to move around. Hearing this, the four of them looked at each other and smiled. Then they sat on the boat and slowly approached the island on the left. As they got closer and closer to the island, they realized that the smell of blood in the air was getting thicker, and the oppressive feeling was getting heavier. Chapter 3593. Not long after, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three finally landed successfully and walked onto the island. The number of cultivators on the island was undoubtedly much more than the island they were on previously. When they saw that a new team had appeared, some of them quietly glanced at them. However, when they saw that it was Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, their expressions changed slightly. They did not expect to see them here. Di Beichen and the others have actually come here too. Looks like we'll be seeing them often on this training grounds in the future. Be careful in the future. Master Long has taken such good care of them. It won't do us any good to offend them. I didn't see the great battle that day. From what I've heard from you guys, it sounds so incredible. I really want to know how strong these guys are to be able to make so many people fear them. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three scanned their surroundings. They had long gotten used to such stares. As long as no one deliberately came to cause trouble, it was fine. It looks like Master Long's attitude the last time really helped us a lot. If it was before, I'm afraid that we would have been attacked by a group. Xiren noticed the gazes around them. Those unscrupulous gazes fell upon them. He could vaguely sense some hostility and unwillingness. It seemed that among these teams, there were cultivators who had fallen in power because of them. Indeed. Di Beichen's lips curled into a devilish arc. As long as these guys don't have the guts to sell to us, we don't have to worry about anything. Xiao He jumped onto Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder. It's a good thing that these guys still have some self-awareness. Otherwise, I'm afraid that we wouldn't have come here to hunt for monstrous beasts, but to hunt for cultivators. Hunt for cultivators. When Xiao He said this, everyone was a little speechless. However, when they thought about it carefully, what she said did make some sense. Standing here, we seem to be closer to the Black Sea water. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell upon the Black Sea water not far away. She had a feeling that the Black Sea water was not normal. There should be some special reason for it. The strangest thing was that in the sea, if it was black, it should be a collective black. How could there be such a clear dividing line? No matter how one looked at it, this was simply impossible. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen and the other two also looked in that direction. After taking a closer look, they realized that this was indeed the case. Look, these cultivators are also rowing their boats towards the Black Sea water. There aren't any demonic beasts on this island. I think we'll still have to fight on the surface of the sea. Xiren pointed to the front and said slowly. Shengguan Yingying's eyes lit up. Let's take a boat and see what's going on. The four of them looked at each other and nodded in unison. All right. After boarding the small boat, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others headed towards the Black Sea. Not far from them, there were other boats heading towards the same destination. After a while, the sounds of battle traveled into everyone's ears. In their line of sight, the cultivators from the outer palace had already clashed with the demonic beasts at the bottom of the sea. Energy waves continued to spread, stirring up waves on the surface of the water. Energy poured out in torrents and water splashed everywhere. The scene was extremely terrifying. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.